In those days, the Crest was in service to the Shade, protectors of Heartvale. We have been resupplied thanks to an encounter with an Altiman merchant, and young Winestone picked up some useful information. Apparently, there are rumors of a wasting sickness happening in a poor district of Davennar called Mudside. A wasting sickness that sounds very much like the same sickness mentioned in these annals. Of course, knowing this disease exists does not protect us against it. I trust the Lieutenant and Erid will defend us from a magical malady, and our chirurgeon has suggested a number of measures that may keep us safe from something more naturally occurring. But in this life, there are no guarantees. Providing the rest of our sea journey is uneventful, we will reach Davennar within the week. And once we arrive, the real work will begin. We will find the Vidala, and we will destroy them. I pray that in so doing, we do not also meet our own end. But if we do, it will be as soldiers of the Crest. Welcome back for another episode of Errant Adventures. As always, I'm your game master and solo player, Steve Morrison. On this week's episode, the Crest near their destination, but there's one more obstacle to overcome. Find out what happens on episode 48, Lightning Round. Last time, the drift ship Andanya encountered an Altiman merchant vessel. They managed to trade for supplies, and that all went very well. And while an officer from the Altiman ship was aboard overseeing the delivery of those supplies, Ben spoke with him for a brief moment. The officer told Ben about a sickness in the Mudside district of Davennar. And this sickness sounded familiar enough to Ben that he mentioned it to Iron Gull and his superiors, and they put that together with what Saga has discovered in the annals about the last time the Crest encountered the cult of Vargosh. While this was going on, Erid and Lephalia began working on a way to defend against the corrupting influence of the Vargosh artifacts. During their magical attempts, they saw a vision of a village enduring a wasting sickness and soldiers of the Crest fighting cultists. Curious about this, they went to speak with Saga to find out more about the Crest's history with the cultists. She tells them about Zevra the Untamed and the battle against Vargosh cultists in Othral. Their mage, she tells them, Tarnish, enacted a ritual that was meant to protect the Crest soldiers from the corrupting influence of the cult, and that ritual felt like it had some pressure on them. Erid believed that Tarnish was creating a barrier around their spirit, and he attempts this very same ritual on Lephalia. And in so doing, he realizes that there is a seed of that corruption deep within her, probably left over from her experiences with the artifact underneath Veilwater. And he attempts to purge that from her, but the only way for him to do that is to discover her true name. And she, whether consciously or subconsciously, pushes him away from discovering her true name, and he is unable to complete the ritual and therefore purge her of this seed of corruption. They separate, and Arid goes up on deck where he runs into Ben, and they exchange information. And this is the point at which they realize the connections that they have with this wasting disease, and that may be a sign of where the cult of Vargosh is hiding. So we rejoin our soldiers of the Crest as they are on the deck of the drift ship Undanya as it sails towards Davennar. I think it's been a couple more days, so we're only a few days out from Davennar. And Ben and Arid and Orchid are on deck, and they're talking about this again. They're going over it once again. And I think Ben says, "Talk me through this ritual again. It has to do with protecting our spirits?" Arid nods and says, "Yes, it is like a barrier that is around your spirit. It is not a physical barrier, but a spiritual barrier. And it keeps away the corruption that is emitted by these artifacts of Vargosh. And you think you can perform this ritual on all of us, keeping us safe from this corrupting influence? Would this keep us safe from the disease as well?" Arid shrugs and says, "I am not sure. It is only a guess that this disease is a spiritual attack. It could very well be a natural reaction to the presence of these cultists, and it would not be defended by this barrier, but I think it is a good way for us to proceed. It seemed to work for our forebears." Yes. Orchid, who's listening to this, says, "Well, I'm convinced. I'd rather have the chance to resist some corrupting influence from these things than not. So, if you need another guinea pig, I'm in." Ben looks at Orchid and then back to Arid and nods and says, "Yes, I think I'm in as well. It sounds as though your first attempt didn't quite go so well, but perhaps another try would be useful for you." Arid nods, and I think this time he speaks in low tones, and he says, "I think that the reason the first attempt did not go so well was because there is a seed of this corruption already in the lieutenant." And he looks around as if he is expecting her to be there. He says, "I do not think that she is compromised, or that she would willfully put us in danger. But it resisted my attempts to create this barrier around her. Now, I could be mistaken, and you two might also possess this same seed of corruption. We may all possess this seed of corruption. We have all come in contact with these artifacts. But she has spent more time total with all of them than any of us. Let me attempt this ritual on you two, and if I have better results, then I can present this to the sergeant and the analyst and the lieutenant again, and we will be able to do it for everyone." Ben and Orchid nod, and Ben says, "I agree. Let's do this." And I think that is going to be our next scene. Now, our previous scene, the chaos factor was 6, and that was speaking with Saga. That led to the ritual where he tried to purge this seed of corruption from Lephalia, and because it didn't go very well, because he wasn't successful, I'm actually going to increase the chaos factor up to 7. We're going to make this scene set up. Arid performs the ritual on Ben and Orchid. So they are acting as guinea pigs for him. And we are going to roll a d10 and compare that against our chaos factor. An 8, which is above the chaos rank. So we are going to play out this scene as expected. The Undanya is cutting through the water, and the oars are slapping away. There's the steady beat of the drum from beneath as the drift sailors pull at the oars and cast the Undanya through the waters. Most of the soldiers of the Crest are playing cards here and there. and the deck is relatively quiet. Arid leads Ben and Orchid over to an area a little bit away from where everyone else is, and he says, I do not know how long this will take. I've only tried this once before, so bear with me. And he is going to begin chanting and focusing. And why don't we go ahead and make this a roll? Now, because Arid has gained an advancement, I went ahead and spent those 3 advancements that I've been saving up to give him a new adept move. And that is Power. Horrible Power. You have achieved arcane mastery over something. Pick one of the following: stone, plants, air, fire, water, metal, illusion, beasts, or the dead. When you command what you have mastered, roll plus arcane. Now, me being me, I'm not going to pick something off that list because I think narratively speaking, it makes sense for Arid to have mastered this magical barrier that he discovered and started learning about in the Alchemic Ruin, and that he has been using, and now he is using that same theory to craft this ethereal, unseen barrier that will protect their spirits, their essence. So that is what I have marked down. I almost went with fire because I thought it would be interesting to have it be fire based off of his experiences getting burned by the fire in that same ruin. But I think with the way that last episode went and the discovery of this ritual and Arid attempting it and succeeding, but also not fully succeeding because of Ophelia, that seemed like it was leading me down the path of that magical barrier a little bit more. So I'm going to roll plus arcane here as I roll 2d6 plus 2. 9 on the dice plus 2 is an 11. So on a hit, hold 1. Spend your hold to bend what you master to your will. For example, shatter stone, create a powerful wind, feed a fire, raise a skeleton, calm a beast. On a 7 and 9, the MC will also pick a consequence from the following list. Well, I got a 10 plus, so no consequence. And Arid is able to bend this magical essence to his will and create this barrier around Ben and Orchid. And I'm going to mark off an advancement point for Arid as Arid engages this ritual, and Ben and Orchid are sort of standing there bracing themselves, unsure of what to expect. And I think all of a sudden, both of them feel this pressure on them. And Ben says, oh, that's interesting. Arid's eyes open and he says, are you all right? What do you feel? Orchid looks over at Ben and then says, I feel like someone's squeezing me. A little tight. I don't mind it. It's not uncomfortable. But it's definitely there. Ben nods and says, I agree. I feel as though I'm being hugged very tightly by Orchid. Orchid sort of laughs and says, yeah, I could say that. Arid says, good. A pressure. That sounds like what Saga described in the annals. Perhaps that means it works. Ben looks at Arid and says, perhaps we should test it. Arid returns the look and says, I don't think I like where your mind is going, my friend. Ben smiles and says, look, if we want to know if this artifact is corrupting and if this barrier will protect us from it, exposure to the artifact is the logical course of action here. I've felt its power. Orchid has felt its power. How will we know if this barrier really does what you think it does unless we put ourselves in a position where we could be corrupted? Arid says, the artifact is with Ophelia, and after our last encounter, I don't know that she will be eager to part with it. We should be cautious. So I guess the question is, are they going to try and steal the artifact from Lephalia, or are they going to go and be honest about what they did and try to talk her into letting them experiment with it? I think that Ben is a little weirded out by her. She's always kind of had it out for him, and I don't know that he feels comfortable with like asking something of her. Arid is sort of on the fence, and Orchid is probably the most sort of neutral on this. I feel like going straight to stealing it is a little bit of an extra jump, because that puts them at odds with another member of the Crest. Not only another member of the Crest, but an officer of the Crest. So I don't think they're going to steal it. But I think maybe what would be better is Arid says, I will go and speak with her and see if I can convince her to let us interact with it. If she is not agreeable to that, then we will have to decide on something else. Ben nods and says, besides, this will give us a chance to see how long this will last. Is it permanent, or will it fade over time? Arid says, that is a good point. I believe it will fade over time. I highly doubt it is permanent. I did not put that much will into it. But we cannot be sure. So Arid is going to go speak with Lephalia about this artifact and getting them access to it. Does that sound like the end of this scene, or is that just part of the scene? I feel like because it has to do with the ritual, it's going to be part of the scene. So we're just going to move to Arid descending down below decks, and Lephalia is in her normal spot. She doesn't have the claw out. She is simply sitting there meditating. Because here's the thing. Arid detected this seed of corruption within her, and he tried to purify it, and she got a little defensive about it. But I think she is not yet corrupted by the cult of Vargosh. I think that she is aware now that there is something going on. And she, I think, has a lot of hubris. And so I think she thinks that she can take care of it on her own, despite the fact that she has tried to take care of a lot of things on her own and they haven't really turned out very well for her. She still thinks that, you know, this particular, because this corruption is inside of her spirit, that she has to be the one to face it and deal with it. So I think that she is focusing on it. She is trying to isolate it and fight it herself. And Arid comes in, and I think she opens her eyes and she says, "Can I help you, Arid? Is there something you need?" And Arid, seeing that she is in this sort of meditative space, says, "I apologize for the interruption, Lieutenant. I am conducting another experiment with the barrier, and I was hoping to take the artifact and test it on my subjects." Lephalia looks at him, and let's ask the fate chart. Is she likely to let him use it? I think so. I think she's likely to let him use it. I think she understands that he has had some good insight on these artifacts, and that if he is trying to use it for something, he's not going to be doing so foolishly. So I'm going to say it's likely. Chaos rank 7. 95 is a no. So is that a no, she won't let him use it? Or is it a no, she won't let him use it, like, out of her sight? Will she let him use it as she, like, supervises? So I think that is 50-50. 98, which is an exceptional no. Okay. These dice are really intending to create conflict within the Crest. So I think she looks up and her eyes flick over to where the artifact is sitting. And I think after a moment, she looks back at him and she says, I don't think that's wise. I think that this artifact is far too dangerous for us to be playing with. You said so yourself, Arid. We shouldn't be messing with powers that we cannot control. It is better if it stays here, hidden away from our fellows in the Crest. They should not be exposed to it any more than anyone else should be. No, it will stay with me here, where it is safe, where I can watch it. Arid looks at her and says, Lieutenant, on the whole, I agree with you that it is dangerous to interact with this artifact. But that is the point. We do not know what the corrupting influence the Vidala may have on our people. We have to be careful, and if this ritual is successful, then we will be safer. Lophalia shakes her head and says, I'm sorry, Arid, but your ritual was a failure. And that is not a reflection on your skills as a mage. No, it is simply a case, a matter of time and effort. You have much to learn, my young friend, and I am sure that you will master this ritual in time. But rushing forward with a trial and potentially corrupting some of our number here on this ship seems unwise. No, I will keep it here, where it can be safe, and you continue your studies. I must return to my meditation, if you don't mind. And with that, she leaves no room for argument. Arid nods and says, very well. And he is going to turn and go back up on deck. When he returns empty-handed to Ben and Orchid, he says, that did not go well. Ben looks at him and says, she wouldn't give it to you, would she? Arid shakes his head. Ben looks over at Orchid and says, how long have you known the lieutenant? Orchid shrugs and says, she was here when I joined. Same with Arid. Been here for a long time. The captain trusts her. I trust her too. And you don't think that she would endanger the Crest, seeking power or knowledge? Orchid looks at Ben and says, I think the captain trusts her. And you should too. I understand your concerns. I share them in some respects. But if she thinks it's too dangerous to be playing with that artifact, a thing that our friend here has said on countless occasions, then maybe she's right. I don't like it any more than you do. I think we should test out this ritual. But the truth is, she's the officer in charge. If she decides that we're not going to do it, we're not going to do it. Ben looks back at Arid and says, I guess that's that then. And I think that is probably a good place to end that scene. So they gained a little bit of information. Arid has successfully, it seems, enacted the ritual, but they don't know if it actually works. I've got a couple of questions for the fate chart as we're in between scenes here. First question for the fate chart. Does the rest of this journey to Davennar pass uneventfully? I think they're in a place now where there's more likelihood of there being pirates or other dangers. They're further away from sort of Heartvale's sphere of influence, and they're closer to Davennar's. And while Davennar very heavily guards its waters, they're not quite to Davennaran waters yet. And so I think it is very unlikely that the rest of this journey passes uneventfully. But let's ask the fate chart. Chaos rank is 7. 56 is a no. Okay, so what does happen in this intervening time? Is it more pirates? Is it another storm? What could it be? I think the obvious first question after this is, does Ben really take that as the end of the conversation? Because I can see a space where Ben tries to steal the artifact from Lephalia so they can test out this ritual and this corrupting influence on it. And that would certainly make the rest of the journey eventful. So I think that is our first question. Is Ben going to try to steal the artifact? I don't think so. In fact, I'm going to go so far as to say there's no way that he's going to try and steal the artifact. But as we know, with the fate chart, because our chaos rank is at 7 right now, that's still a 35% chance of a yes. So let's roll the dice and see if Ben gets himself killed trying to steal from the lieutenant. 59 is a no. So he is like, all right, I'm going to let this go. It's all right. We'll figure out another way to learn. You know, I think he's maybe even has a conversation later with Arid where he's like, I'm frustrated about not being able to test out this ritual now, but I understand Orchid's stance. I suppose we'll just have to field test it once we get to Davennar. Arid nods and says, yes, and we will hope it works. If not, we'll just have to deal with things the old-fashioned way. Willpower and moxie. Okay, so they're not going to try and steal the artifact. Maybe not the best thing as far as entertainment goes, but it definitely makes life a little bit safer for Ben and anybody else that he might loop into that. So let's go to the next logical question. Is it pirates? Let's say 50-50. 65 is a yes. Yep, more pirates. It's later that evening, so they're about 3 days away from Davennar. And close to sunset, they realize that there's another ship closing on them. They catch sight of it. And Steward Seta sees the ship and sort of is studying its movements and then the way it's sort of like cutting through the water. And she says, it's got to be pirates. Davennar and military ships don't move like that. And any merchant vessel wouldn't be sailing directly at us. It's got to be pirates. Is it just one ship or are there multiple ships? I think it's more likely that there are multiple ships and that they are closing in such a way that they're trying to basically hem the Undanya in, so there is no way to escape. So I'm going to ask the fate chart that. I think it is very likely that there are multiple ships. Cast rank is 7. 7 on the dice, which is an exceptional yes. So there are, roll a d6, 5 ships. So that's not good at all. So there are 5 pirate ships that sort of, I think this is happening through the afternoon and the early evening where the ships first start to appear on the horizon and then they're drawing closer. And like the first ship or two are sort of like sailing together and the steward is aware and like on edge, but she's not necessarily concerned. And then she sees another ship kind of off to their starboard where the others were off to the port. And then she sees another one kind of like coming out of a cove. They're sailing along the shore. And I think as it's getting closer to early evening, the sun is starting to set, but it hasn't quite set yet. She is growing very, very concerned. And she has this realization that they're pirates, that they don't move like Davennaran warships or Heartvale ships or drift ships or anything other than pirates. and she is trying to maneuver and escape basically into the darkness. Like, if she can keep going and sort of like the sun will set before any of these ships can close to within battle range, that she may still be able to slip them away. But I think we got to ask the fate chart. Is she able to evade these 5 ships? And I'm going to say it's impossible. So chaos factor of 7. Here we go. 36 is a no. No, she's not able to evade these ships, which means they're going to strike. Now, 1 ship against 5 ships, it's not very likely that they're going to survive that sort of conflict. However, I think not all of those ships are like the Andanya. I think a couple of them are much smaller ships. So they are going to, I think, hang back a little bit. Their job was essentially to sort of box the ship in. And there's maybe 1 or 2 of these pirate ships that are actually close to a match for the Andanya. As it becomes clear that these ships are closing into distance to battle the Andanya, Ben, Arid, Orchid, I mean, basically all the Crest soldiers are assembled on deck. Iron Gall and Lephalia are present as well. And the steward calls down to them and says, "Well, I'm afraid we have a bit of trouble. A group of pirates are closing on us, and they seem willing and able to do battle. Once they reach us, I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to keep them all off of us. If their actions are consistent with actions of pirates in these waters, they will try to board us and search us for valuables, which means we will have a fight on our hands, a fight on 2 sides. I'm thankful to have you Crest soldiers here and those others as well." As she looks to where these really creepy occult infiltrators with their dark clothes and veils over their faces are standing. She says, "If we stand together, we can defend the Andanya, and I can still get you to Davennar to complete your mission. But we cannot face doubts here and now. We will defeat these pirates. All we have to do is break their will to fight. If we can do that, we'll be successful. We'll win the day, and we'll live to fight and sail another day." So as we go into our next scene, we're going to have our scene set up be survive the pirate attack, and our chaos factor is definitely going up to 8 now. And I'm going to roll my d10, see how this plays out. I rolled a 9, so it's going to play out as we set it up. The ships are drawing closer towards the Andanya. And aboard the Andanya, the drift sailors who are not actively engaged in sending the Andanya striving through the sea, trying to escape, have gathered their weapons and are prepared to defend their ship. Standing beside them are soldiers of the Crest, blades in hand. Some of the Crest soldiers, Ben included, are arrayed with their crossbows and bows at the ready, prepared to take shots at the pirates who are closing in on them. Iron Gull is holding on to a rope coming from the central mast, and he is in the process of saying, "All right, everyone, you know your business. Those pirates are going to come over the railing. We're going to fight them. We're going to hold our ground. And we're going to send them back to the sea. Crest soldiers, stand and do your duty, as I know each and every one of you will." Further back, Lephalia and Arid stand with the steward. And Lephalia is in the midst of chanting. Arid, I think, watching her, has this realization that she is not holding back, that she is making a great work, that she is chanting and calling out to the skies, to the seas below, to the air itself. And there is this hum and reverberation that is around them. She is preparing to unleash a torrent of magical energy on these ships as they close in. And Arid is simply watching. He offered his assistance, but she brushed him off. She asked him to protect her, to keep an eye out for enemy mages who might try to lash out at her while she is gathering this storm to rain down on their enemies. In the midst of the deck, Orchid stands with Bone Eater, ready, rolling their shoulders, cracking their neck, prepared to meet their foes with the sharp edge of their axe. As the ships close in, missiles fly back and forth from the crossbowmen and bowmen on both ships. Ballistae lash out and crack against the wood. A few of the drift sailors on the ship are downed by stray arrows, and likewise Ben is able to launch an attack with his crossbow. And let's go ahead and just get right into it. And he is going to face Zeres with his steady of 3. 7 on the dice plus 3 is a 10. So he achieves what he set out to do. His crossbow bolt arcs out across the open water and strikes one of the pirates who is standing on the bow, ready to leap over onto the Undania. The pirate goes down with a gurgle and a crash. And then, almost within an instant, these two pirate ships have drawn up alongside the Undania. Grappling hooks have lashed out and grabbed hold of the ship. And these two pirate ships slam into the sides of the Undania as pirates stream over the edges of the decks and charge into the melee. Orchid steps forward and is going to lead the counter charge as they engage in combat. 2d6 plus 3, filling up their first advancement track because of using Fierce in this. And I am going to also be using here Send an Army for I Will Not Relent, because Orchid is taking on a number of these pirates themselves. 2d6 plus 3, here we go. 6 on the dice plus 3 is a 9. So, on engage in combat, when you attack someone with the intent to do harm, roll plus Fierce. On a 7 and 9, choose 1. Attack with vigor, parry their blows, battle aggressively, or fight defensively. Well, because Orchid is taking no penalties and has an armor of 2, I don't think I need to worry about parrying any blows here. So I think they are going to go ahead and attack with vigor. This is going to be inflict plus 1 harm. They already have a 3 harm axe, so that is going to be 4 harm. I'm going to make 2 clocks, 1 for each pirate ship. Each pirate ship is going to have 8 segments. Orchid, in one charge, axe swinging, eviscerates a number of these pirates, and they collapse to the ground as Orchid makes a display, once again chanting and singing a death song in Pharamorkian. And this is pretty intimidating for these pirates, but there are more streaming over the sides and closing in. Ben turns and pulls his crossbow taut again as he draws a bead on one of the pirates who has come over the edge. He's going to attempt to, in this last moment before the melee begins, take out one of these pirates with his crossbow. Rolling face duress once again. This is plus steady. 2 on the dice, plus 3 is a 5. In his haste, he drew back the crossbow, but it doesn't quite latch. And he is distracted as he is unable to get it to fully latch in so that he can fire it. And he is distracted as one of these pirates comes charging up and bowls into him, and he collapses onto his back. He struggles back a little bit as the pirate raises an axe over their head to slam it down on him. And he is going to, I think, have to face duress again, this time to scramble back and out of the way as this blow is coming. Steady plus 3. 5 on the dice plus 3 is an 8. So he can achieve his goal, but at a price. He can only partially achieve his goal, or cannot achieve his goal but can do something similar instead. Well, I think he's going to achieve his goal, but at a price. And that price is going to be a harm. Now, over the course of this time that they've been sailing, they had some harm still from their previous adventures, but I have been slowly reducing that as we've gone along. So currently, Orchid has no harm on them. Arid still has 2 harm, and Ben is sitting at 1 harm right now. But he's going to take a harm as a consequence for sort of mostly getting out of the way, but the axe comes down and I think clips his leg, and he groans in pain as he struggles to his feet, draws his sword, and charges in with his own engage in combat. Plus 2 fierce, 7 on the dice, plus 2 is a 9. So he is going to deal 2 harm and is going to parry their blows and take -1 harm, which means he is not going to take any additional harm. So we're going to fill 2 more sections of that clock as we turn to Arid. More pirates are streaming up towards where Arid and Lephalia are. And Arid is going to attempt to keep them at bay and is going to do so by rolling arcane to inflict harm. 6 on the dice plus 2 is an 8 on his engage in combat. So he is going to unleash a torrent of fire. We'll go back to fire here. As he unleashes this down on them, I think he is going to fight defensively because he is trying to protect Lephalia. So he's going to deal -1 harm, but he's going to take an additional -2 harm himself, which means he is not going to take any harm from their attack. But he's only going to deal 1 harm because his attack deals multiple harm. So that is going to almost fill up this clock. And then I think because he was successful in fighting defensively, I think we should ask the question, does Lephalia unleash her magics on these pirates? I think the answer is yes. Yes, she does. How successful is she at doing that? I think very likely that she is successful. Chaos rank of 8. 83 is a yes. So she is successful at unleashing her magics. And I think lightning falls from the sky and strikes a couple of the ships that are out there, these smaller ships that aren't really closing in on the Andanya. And even over the distance, you can hear the wood cracking and sailors screaming in terror. Does one of those lightning bolts hit one of the pirate ships that is currently attached to the Andanya? I think that is somewhat likely. Again, chaos rank of 8. 20. Yes, it certainly does. So crack, it comes down and splinters. Does that deal any harm to the pirates on that ship? I think, again, very likely. Yes, it does. 74. So how much harm do we think that a lightning bolt from the chief sorceress of the Crest would deal? I feel like that's got to be an easy 4 harm as she brings this down, and we're going to fill part of the second pirate ship's track as lightning cracks down and a number of the pirates on that ship scream in pain and terror. Orchid turns and continues wading in with their axe. This is going to be another engage in combat +3 for fierce. 7 on the dice, +3 is a 10. So on a 10, this is going to again deal 3, and I'm going to go with attack with vigor, so that's going to inflict +1 harm. So 4 harm, and then I can stymie an opponent. They must change their behavior, are impressive or dominant, gain the attention or respect of those present, achieve a goal. You may change the situation, grab something from your opponent, push them somewhere, block the entrance, or exit. I think that I am going to say that since we're dealing 4 harm, that's going to fill the rest of the pie on that second ship. And there's, with only 1 segment left on the first ship, I think the change in situation here is those pirates who survive flee. That lightning bolt that fell from the sky hit one of the ships and ignited it, and it is now burning. So those pirates who can survive scramble onto the other ship, trying to cut the ropes after them. Does Lephalia, who I think has finally let go and, like I said, is not holding back, does she let them escape? Or does she burn their ships down as well? I do not think that she is going to let them escape. So does Lephalia burn their ships down to the water? I think it's very likely. Chaos rank of 8. 80 is a yes. Yes, she does. So this pirate ship tries to break away, and lightning falls once again and cracks against the wooden planks of this pirate ship as it is attempting to flee. And the lightning just cracks the ship in half and it begins to sink. The other ship, the last ship that is still standing, is like turning to run as it has watched 4 of its fellow pirate ships get obliterated by lightning. And as it is fleeing, the thunder rolls, the lightning flashes, and once again a bolt falls down and cracks through this small ship that is trying to flee, and it sinks. And in the silence that follows, I think the steward turns to Lephalia and Arid, who are standing next to her, and she says, "I knew you Crest were handy in a fight, but if I'd known you were this good, I would have offered to ferry you around anywhere you wanted." Arid smiles and says, "All in an evening's work, steward." And that is where we will end this scene. Another few days pass, and the Andanya draws close to Davennar. Ben, Arid, Orchid, Erdira are standing at the bow once again, looking out. And Ben says, "I think I see it, there in the distance. I've never gotten this close before." Erdira, I think, reaches over and surreptitiously sort of squeezes his arm. He looks back at her and smiles. Orchid, who is squinting against the sun, says, "What are those towers? Was that the city itself? Have they built up that much?" Ben nods and says, "Partially, yes. Davennar is a strange place. They landed on an island just off the shore during the Great Escape from the shrouding of Elfheim. Much like the founding of Hartvale, it came in the wake of that great disaster. Their ships ran aground on this island, and they didn't realize that it wasn't the mainland. They began building their camp there, their colony. And it wasn't until later that they realized they were not on the mainland. They were simply on this small little island. And it was already too late. They had begun building. And they continued. They continued building and have continued for 600 years. Building on building on building, growing a city built on itself. I'm told it's an impressive place. Guess we'll see soon enough. As the drift ship Undanya draws closer and closer, Davennar itself begins to come into view. And the first thing that Ben and Arid and the others see is a great set of stone spears jutting out of the water, seemingly everywhere, like teeth. And on those teeth, on those spines, are speared a dozen or more ships. Orchid says, "Now what are those now?" And Ben says, "Those are the city's defenses. The reason they didn't move off that island is because the entire city is surrounded by those rocky outcroppings. There's only one safe passage through. It makes the city itself nigh on impenetrable. Davennaran naval ships are renowned for driving other ships that do not comply with their orders onto those spines, and then scavengers come out from the city to tear them to pieces and take the wood and goods and other things back to the city." "Well, that seems a little rude." "Davennar is not like Hartvale," Ben says. "At least not according to what I've been told. It is a harsher place, a darker place. It is not only called Davennar. That is its name. But it is also called the City of Spines, and the city that bleeds." Thanks for listening to Errant Adventures, and thank you so much to Syrinscape for the lovely ambient sounds and music throughout the episode. If you enjoyed the show, please tell anyone and everyone in your life about it. And if you want to support the show directly, leave me a review or buy me a coffee at coffee.com/errantadventures. That's ko-fi.com/errantadventures. If you want to interact with me, my handle on Instagram and Twitter is @errantsolopod, or you can email me at errantsolopod@gmail.com. I also post short fiction and campaign-related materials on my website, errantadventurespod.com. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.